Blog Talk Radio. The pot is always hot. The best DJs on the block. Brewing deep soulful house music is what handsonradio.fm is all about.
Welcome to Hands on Talk Radio, brought to you by Hands on Radio. Welcome to all our listeners. If you would like to dial in, please call 1-347-237-5205. If you want to tune in on the web, go to handsonradio.fm/talk. If you have a question or comment and you dialed in, press 1 on your phone if you have a question. If you're on the web, then use the click to talk feature on the top of your screen and go ahead and I'll show you the line. So we have Chicago.
Yo, what's going on? What's going on? Thanks for having me. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. This is Sinuosa, and this is my first time doing a solo on Hands on Talk Radio. I'm dealing with the flu.
You're a real trooper, sister. You're a real trooper.
By the way,
Thanks for having me on for sure.
Oh, thank you. I wanted to ask you, and I know you're up in Chicago, how is the weather? We heard about that blizzard y'all had up there.
Oh, man. It went from the blizzard to brick.
Oh.
It's very cold. It's very cold. It's about 9 degrees below zero with the wind chill.
Ooh, that's why I don't live in Chicago, man.
Yeah, it's cold. It's real cold. So we went from having, getting hit with a blizzard to extreme cold, but this is what we're used to. This is Chicago, so it comes with the territory. I love it. I hate it, but I love it.
Well, at least y'all got some houses good better to keep y'all warm.
Oh yes. It's my dog. Yeah. He wants to. Yes. He wants to play. Daddy's doing the interview. Shut up,
Daddy.
Yeah. So actually, I most definitely am glad to say that I'm from Chicago, and what I get in my hometown is something that I can't get anywhere else. I've been to a lot of places all over the world, and I still personally have the feeling that some of the greatest DJs on the planet come from Chicago. And I'm not saying that to knock anyone else, but I just know how we have a distinct style on how we DJ, and it's kind of ingrained in me, and I most definitely have opened my mind up to a lot of other DJs and other sounds, but there's no place like home.
Yeah, I think every town has their own.
Yeah, and that's everywhere.
Town.
That's everywhere. That is home. So it's what you know, and that's what what you're used to and what you love. So most definitely, it's universal. I found that out. It's a universal feeling.
Well, how did you get started in house music? How did it all get started for you?
Ooh, house music is my hip hop. I came up in the early stages of the evolution of how it came from disco to new wave punk to the electronic Italian disco jams to the self-produced, cuts here and tracks that ended up becoming, what was known as house music. I've seen the stages, from the infancy all the way up to, it blew up outside of Chicago. And it's really amazing that, it took me some time to look back on it and think, and I was just like, wow, I really came up in a time period that some people would have loved to experience. And it's like some people, kind of took that for granted, and I did myself, and I had to do some reflecting and realize, you know, I came up under some dance music gods. So that's kind of why I kind of have high standards, because that's what I was presented with. You know, was quality. So it's kind of hard for me to, you know, accept something that's substandard when I know how it's supposed to be done, and get schooled by the people who, you know, are some of the originators of this. So, you know, it's like you got to be authentic or I can't mess with you.
Yeah, I can understand that. So we're talking circa 80 maybe? 80?
Man, from 1980 all the way till about, because see, what a lot of people don't know is there was a whole culture associated with house music, and even prior to it even being called house music, there still was a culture that was associated, you know, with partying and everything like that. It was fashion, you know, style, hairstyles, things you wore, how you talked, how you spoke. You know, it's like you just knew, hey, he know where the party is. Where the party at? You know, you could just look at somebody and tell, you know, and just be like, hey, where's the party at, man? And it was that easy, you know, and it's like from like 1980, started listening to, you know, like a lot of the radio shows, a lot of the radio DJs, like, you know, the Hot Mix 5, Herb Kent with his Punk It Out show. I mean, there's a lot of influences, you know, and a lot of it came from the radio, because the radio was presenting it everywhere. Every other station was playing dance music, because Chicago is a dance city. And it's like you couldn't escape it. It's almost just like how it is now, where you can't escape Lil Wayne, Waka Flocka, and all that other crap. You know, right? You know, it's the same thing. And you know, I was impressionable because I was a young kid. So it's the same thing. I can relate to how these kids are, you know, and how, you know, when you're young, the music that you get into as a youngster, as a teenager, it ends up becoming the music that you're really into, you know, and the music that you can reflect on and have great memories. So there's certain songs that I can hear that I can think back and remember I was at a party. Oh, I remember when Ron Hardy played this song 6 times, you know, things like that. You know, just great times, you know. So, I mean, I've just really have been blessed to be able to have come up, and I came up on the tail end of things, you know, when things were kind of going down, not when it was peaking. You know, it was like there was a different kind of, there was like a first generation of, you know, partiers, house patrons, and then there was like a changing of the guard, and it was like a second and a third generation. I fall in between the second, between the end of the first and the second generation. So I would say from about 1985 on, that's when I most definitely was hardcore house.
So if you listen to Jesse Saunders, of course he says he's the originator of house music. I'm not saying that's what he say.
Oh, well, you know, I could never not, you know, not Jesse, because he most definitely, you know, him and Vince Lawrence, which actually was the guy who really helped him out, you know, with a lot of his productions, they most definitely are, you know, some of the originators, you know, so I could never, you know, knock that, you know, because that's just fact, you know, I'll never knock that, you know, but, you know, there's a lot of other people, you know, there's a lot of other people who have been unsung heroes, like prior to, I say within the past 10 years, a lot of people didn't even really know how influential Ron Hardy was to a lot of producers, to a lot of, you know, musicians, to a lot of DJs. You know, a lot of people, when the journalists and the people went to the same people all the time and they got the same story. Right. And it was like some people would purposely just big up themselves and their people. Right. And would leave out, you know, certain things, you know, and like I said, that's cool, but, you know, I'm really a I'm a history buff, so it's like any kind of house music, dance music, facts, history that I can get regarding this, I search it up and look for it. You know, I've had conversations with people about, you know, people who, you know, artists and certain producers and DJs and things like that, and I've brought things to their attention that they've totally forgotten about. You know, like, how do you remember this? You know, it's just because I'm, you know, really, really deep into the culture, you know, into the culture of things. But most definitely, Jesse Saunders, he most definitely had an influence on me. I remember how huge On and On was, you know, and he was a very, very popular DJ, you know, teenage DJ. So he most definitely is one of the early pioneers. You know, well, I would most definitely give him his props. But the ultimate godfather is Mr. Robert Williams, because he brought the flavor and the style from the gallery and the loft to Chicago, and brought Frankie Knuckles from New York to Chicago and gave him his chance, and the rest is history. So you have to give it up to Mr. Robert Williams first, because if it wasn't for him, there wouldn't be nothing. And I just have to, you know, I have to give it up. You know, if it wasn't for Rob's vision of bringing what he saw that was missing in Chicago, that he saw in his hometown in New York, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
So
we'd probably be talking about blues.
He brought Frankie Knuckles from New York to Chicago.
Yes. Originally, his first, for the Wet House, originally his first choice was Larry Levan. Larry didn't want to come. So Larry put on Frankie.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So Ron, so you would say, because I said this before, I said, yeah, you know, Jesse Saunders said he started a house, and, you know, I brought the Brook and everything. I met him in Atlanta, and then, you know, people go, oh, no, blah, blah, blah. So now I'm like, well, you know, I kind of say it gently, because it depends on who you're talking to, whether that's fact or not. I said, but the book said it. But, you know, so you would say Jesse started it, I guess, with a few others. Ron Hardy was back in that day too, right?
Yeah, I mean there's a lot of people besides, you know, some of the main players who all played a part in spreading this. You know, at one time in Chicago, for a square mile, you would have at least 4 DJs.
Oh, really?
It's like DJing and making music was like a hobby for a lot of people, you know, a lot of teenagers, and it was like DJ equipment was like our versions of Xboxes and PlayStations. You know, we would go over to each other's houses, you know, and spin records and try to copy stuff that we heard at parties or, you know, on the radio. You know, so I mean, there's a lot of people who played a part in it. There can't just be one. There is no king. That's the best way to put it. There's no king. It's a kingdom, but there is no king.
Okay.
You know, there's a lot of knights. Everyone played a part in somehow, some way. You know, it's not just, you know, it's not just the Hot Mix 5, Ron Hardy, Frankie, and, you know, a few other people like Lil Lewis and things like that. There were a lot of people, you know, who played a part in this, and the radio really was a heavy, heavy influence on spreading the music. Because besides the commercial radio stations, we had college radio stations and college radio DJs. And there were parties, multiple parties on the same night, filled with hundreds, if not thousands, of kids partying, dancing. You know, it kept a lot of kids. I most definitely can say it saved my life, because I know a lot of people who I came up with that got into drugs, gangbanging, and things like that, and they're either in jail, dead, or strung out on dope. I was into music and house music and the culture with that, so, you know, that was my thing. So it most definitely kept me, and I've had this conversation with a lot of people. You know, it saved a lot of people from, Chicago was real wild in the 80s, so it saved a lot of people, you know, from a lot of madness. You know, so, I mean, it most definitely kept a lot of kids off the streets.
Well, how did you start DJing? Well, what made you say, hey, I'm going to stop just listening and dancing, I'm going to start DJing? What made you do that?
You know what? I always was into the DJ culture. I came up around a lot of DJs. There were tons of DJs in my neighborhood, but like I said, I always, fiddled around a little bit with one of my cousin's friends. He had a nice stereo set up with 2 turntables and a mixer and things like that. But at that time, we were just playing records one after another. We really weren't mixing, and then I got into the whole mixing concept. I'd say probably about 1985 is when I really, really got into it. I really didn't have a teacher. I was more a student from listening to tape studying DJs at parties I went to. Even though I still danced, there was still a time where I stopped dancing and I was just studying, the DJ and what, he was doing and how he could control the whole vibe of a party. The power was behind this one person rocking, and it's like, man, I want to do this, and I'm more self-taught than anything. I didn't have anyone stand over me and like, this is what you do, this is what you do. It was more self-taught, and I was a natural, So, I mean, it's just something that I love doing. This is my thing, and it's just something that was basically inevitable.
So, and I'm going to ask this question because I'm going to go and make it go to the future, okay? The first time I heard you, now, we had already, met each other online, chatting and stuff on the internet radio stations. But the first time I ever heard you rock it, really, and I was like, is that Jamie? Oh, my goodness. Was at the Shelter Party and the Winter Music Conference. I think it was 2009, maybe, I think it was.
Oh, yeah. I had some fun playing down there.
Oh, man, you tore it up. And I was like, is that Jamie? There was a girl. There he is in there rocking. Matter of fact, that year it was 2 rooms. I got to say this. It was 2 rooms at the Shelter Party. It was the smaller room in the front when you first come in. You had the larger room. You had to walk past to get to the larger room. We stayed in the first room because you was banging, yo. Now, being from Chicago, and even though we know the Shelter's in New York, how did you wind up getting that hookup? Because most of those DJs were New York guys. How did you wind up getting into that?
I was, until someone brought it to my attention after the fact, I was just like, man, I'm a fan of Timmy. I'm cool. I'm cool with him. I know him. He's one of my favorites. Who I like to party to, and I was very, very surprised when I got the call. And the invitation. To play. And I was just like, hell yeah. I'm gonna do it. I'm like, what? In Miami, the Shelter Party, yeah. And it's like it didn't kick in until after the party. Where, people were like, man, you were the first Chicago DJ to play a Shelter Party.
Really?
And, yeah. So I was like, wow. I mean, during the conference, I was one of the first DJs from Chicago to play at, that event. And it really, I had so much fun playing it, and then when they invited me back, I was just like, oh, man, oh, hell yeah. It was really a highlight of my trip down there, was playing that party, playing the event. I really had fun, and everyone, that front room was rocking.
Yes, it was. I was getting my life. I mean, I stopped running my mouth with people. I stopped networking just to go in and start dancing. You may not remember. I think that's what I did. I actually left the networking part. I left where everybody was talking. I went in the room, found me a little spot, and Blade and I was shaking a leg on there. Man, woo! I was like, yo, he is good. And I felt kind of honored because I knew you. I said, I know him.
Yeah, I was most definitely taken back by a lot of that because I I'm so focused on just doing my thing. Sometimes I don't have the time to sit back and totally enjoy some of the accomplishments that I've made, because I guess part of it is I try to stay humble about the way I rumble. So I don't You know, I don't just, you know, broadcast everything, you know, like, yeah, I'm playing here. Now look at me. You know, I try to stay, you know, very modest, you know, about my thing, because I know there's always going to be someone in the shadows waiting. Right. And I know this because I was that dude. So, you know, I know, you know, so it's like that just keeps me on my toes, you know, and also, you know, I know coming where I come from Chicago, you know, there's a massive amount of very talented DJs in my city. So it's like it just keeps you on your toes. You know, it's like there's some people who get comfortable. I'm not comfortable. I'm all about I just want to keep learning and elevating myself to get even better. You know, and that's how I believe a DJ should be. You shouldn't get comfortable, because that dude in the shadows is going to come out and he's going to shut you down. You know, and he's just going to shut you down, and I don't ever want to be on that end.
Right. You know, because some DJs, I won't say any names, but some DJs will try to lock people out because they're afraid to get, they're afraid of getting blasted, so they won't let certain DJs play, you know?
You know, sometimes, but, you know, on the other hand, you know, I used to kind of think that as well until I really started, you know, building with a lot of, you know, legendary DJs and DJs who I actually looked up to. Mm-hmm. And I realized that, you know, sometimes when you're overly aggressive, that puts people off.
Right.
You know, and it's like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being hungry. There's nothing wrong with being hungry and being passionate. But there's also a way to be respectful, you know, towards someone. You know, even there's friendly competition. That's no problem. But some people take it a little bit to the way extreme. You know, and it's like, dude, we're just playing records. You know, calm down. You know, calm down. You know, and it's like, you know, sometimes, you know, a lot of people, you know, they think that they have this sense of entitlement, you know, where they believe, you know, I've been doing this for 35 years. You know, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. And it's like sometimes if you put that energy into doing your thing instead of focusing on all other kinds of BS, you might get somewhere. You know, number one. Number two, you're not owed anything. You know, and it's like, it also comes down to respect. You know, you're supposed to respect the people that came before you. You know, and some people don't. You know, and it's regardless of if I feel that I can play better than this person or something like that. He put in work, and I'm benefiting from his work. You know, and it's like that's where a lot of people need to get to again. You know, realizing, you know, that, hey, this cat is busting his ass. You know, he's been doing this professionally for so many years, and he's successful. And it's like so many people always want to try to have an ulterior motive when they go to these people, and it's like, if you just treat folks how you want to be treated, and don't try to come to people, you know, with an ulterior motive, and treat people as human beings and not superstars and things like that, you never know what might happen, you know, because they are people. Just because they're a DJ, that doesn't mean that they're not a person with feelings. You know what I'm saying? Things like that. You know, people get on there, you know, especially now it's a lot different now with the whole internet and Facebook thing, you know, because people can, you know, become keyboard gangsters, you know, and just talk, you know, all kinds of crazy crap, you know, and then, you know, in public, they're quiet as a church mouse. Yep. You know, and it's like, you know, it's kind of funny, but it's also kind of sad, you know, because it's like, it's not that serious, you know, once again, and it's like sometimes some people don't understand that they're their own worst enemies. You know, sometimes people may not put you on because you may seem like a problem. If you don't get your way, you're going to act a fool. Professionals don't have time for that. No, they have other things to worry about. Promoters have other things to worry about.
They
the
sure
DJ
do.
is supposed to be the last thing that they worry about. That's supposed to be automatic. I know I got so-and-so DJing, the music is good. Let me worry about my bar and this and this and this and this. You know, instead of, you know, this DJ doesn't want to open up. You know, that kind of stuff. You know, it's just a lot to it. You know, I realize as the further I've gone in the game, I've just seen so many different levels, you know, of it, and it's just amazing, you know. But I most definitely give props to those who do this full-time as a living, because I work a day job and I DJ. So it's a little bit different for me with my approach, because I have something to, you know, to fall back on. And
right,
a lot
you
of
have a day job. Yeah, you have a day job. Well, you know,
and
well,
it's just something that, you know, I don't mean to cut you off, but, you know, that's just something that, you know, kind of makes me thankful, number one, you know, especially in the economy we're in, but, you know, number two, you know, I understand why, you know, some of these DJs can be, you know, overly aggressive and things like that, or so protective, because this is how, you know, they eat, you know.
Right.
So I kind of understand, you know, it's survival of the fittest, but I guess I just try to have a little class about things, you know, and not, you know, try to get, you know, in the middle of, you know, a lot of garbage and BS, you know, because honestly I don't have time for it, and I don't think it's that serious. We're just playing records.
We're just playing records. Well, I want to once again welcome everybody to Hands On Talk Radio, and brought to you by Hands On Radio. If you want to listen in online, go to handsonradio.fm/talk. If you want to call in, it's 347-237-5205. If you have a question or comment, press 1 on your phone. If you're on the line, if you're on web and you have a question, just click the talk feature on the top if you have a question or comment. So once again, we're with Jamie 326 out of Chicago, having a great conversation. And I wanted to get back to, now we know about why you started DJing. We know why you know, how you got in the house. But what I really wanted to ask you is, how did you start getting into production? Because that's a whole different thing. So how did you wind up getting into that?
Man, you know, just like I said earlier, you know, there were friends who had turntables, and there were friends who had, like, drum machines and keyboards. And I messed around with, you know, with everything, because I was just so excited, you know, to just be around music or DJing or anything like that. I would drop whatever, you know, to be around someone who's making music or spinning music or anything like that when I was, you know, younger and when I was a teenager. So it's like, you got me with a good one.
Well, I mean, because I know you're doing some production, and you.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm really thinking. I guess because I'm thinking back, and like I said, you know, it's just something that's just a part of my life. So it's not as though I look at it as, you know, something fabulous or something. To someone else, they may see it, you know, as something like, oh, wow, you know, and I'm just like, this is just something that, you know, we did. We just hung out, you know, and did this kind of stuff. I mean, I hung out with a lot of people, you know, like Glenn Underground. I learned a lot of early stuff from him, from Paul Johnson, a friend of mine, Cooley Mack, Leonard Remix Roy. There's a lot of people I learned, you know, a lot of things from, and it's like now I'm getting my feet back wet, you know, in production, and it's a lot easier now than it was, you know, years ago, and that's probably why I was hanging out at Glenn's house so damn much, because he had a ton of equipment, and I couldn't afford to, you know, to buy samplers and keyboards, drum machines, and all this stuff. So, you know, in between his sessions, you know, I would diddle sometimes, or, you know, he would help me out, you know, with some production work, show me some things. He would play some things for me, you know, and it kind of graduated, you know, from there. And, I mean, I got out of it, and then once they came out with a lot of programs and software for computers, it made it a lot more easier for me to get back into it because I didn't have to purchase, a bunch of hardware, a bunch of equipment. So I've been, diddling for some time, and now it's most definitely becoming a very, very nice venture. I mean, I have a lot of projects coming down the line that it's more remix work than anything, and right now I'm in the middle of completing an original EP of original music. So I have a lot of things, I have a lot of things going on, and it's like I'm taking a lot of things that I learned from all of my experiences with all these talented cats and trying to create and come up with my very own thing instead of, emulating someone and not adding my own flavor to it. I'd rather use their influence on me to push myself even further. So I most definitely have a lot of things coming down the pipeline. All I got to say is stay tuned. That's all I have to say is stay tuned because I have a lot of good things coming down the pipeline. I'm just not going to, I can't speak on a lot of things now because a lot of things are still in the finalization process. So, but most definitely there's going to be some things.
Come on. Is there a ballpark of where we might hear something or
well, I know one of the main projects that I will mention that was most definitely an honor was being requested by Marshall Jefferson to do some work. So that most definitely first off, this is a guy who's one of my musical gods. So, it's like to, get a call, like, hey, man, I want you to do some work for me, and I'm just like, what? So, because I'm still a fan of this. I'm never going to be one that feels that they're bigger than the music and a superstar, things like that. I love this. It's a genuine love for it, and, like I said, to get a call from one of your, legends that you looked up to, somebody who really influenced you, and to let you know that you're doing something good if someone you looked up to is looking at you, so that's why sometimes I try to tell people, you never know, who's checking you out. So it's best to try to be cool and just do your thing and let that speak for itself. And I've had to learn the hard way, because I know I can let it rip too, so I had to learn the hard way, and it's like that's why I tell a lot of personal experiences, like on Facebook and sometimes on the Deep House page, things like that, because I learned the hard way. No one really grabbed me by the hand and was like, you don't do it that way, you do it this way. I learned from the school of hard knocks. I got a lot of knots on my head. I learned the hard way. So that's why I try to, reach back and, give advice to people, and let them know, how not to make some of the same mistakes, that I've made, because, how are you going to keep something going, keep something alive if you have all this information and it's already done you good and you just hold on to it? You need to pass that on so someone else can benefit from it now. And that's how you keep the chain going. But a lot of people don't understand that, or they have their own, selfish reasons why they do things. And sometimes that's why they're not successful, because they're not genuine with it, or they don't really have any true love for it. There's nothing wrong with, it's love to make money doing what you love. I'm never that, knocking that. But the thing is, sometimes when that love turns to greed, it's just like a relationship. You take it for granted, one day it's going to be gone.
Yes, That's true.
And you're gonna be like, man, you're gonna see her with the next dude riding by in the car. And then you standing there like, what I do? It's the same thing, That's how I see it. It's the same thing.
Well, and I saw you. Okay, so I saw you the first time. Well, I met you. I think we actually spoke at the shelter party, but we chatted on and off since then. On different sites or whatever. But then I heard the news that you was coming to Baltimore playing at Club 347. So, I was like, gotta be there. So I want to ask you, if I could never get the words out, how'd you wind up, because our listeners don't know this. By the way, this is Jamie 326 I'm talking to. So how did Jamie 326 go from, Miami, where the music comes, which a lot of people do, from a Chicago DJ to end up DJing at Club 347 in Baltimore, Maryland? How'd that happen?
Man, 347 is one of my favorite spots to go get down. And I mean, not even play. I mean, party. Because first off, Biscuit, Brian, that's my boy. And I love the way we're friends, but it's a more of a respect level that I learned a lot from him from just coming to 347 for the few times that I've been there and just partied, and saw, how he worked the room, worked the crowd. I noticed the difference, the regional difference, like in Baltimore. You got to come with it.
That's
and
right.
It's like a lot of vocals.
That's right.
And it's like you got it. So it's like I just learned, a lot of things, and it's like when I was asked to, did I want to play there? Like hell yeah, right? And it was like, but that wasn't like my first time playing in Baltimore. I actually had played the white party that Pope and OG do during Collective Minds.
Oh, okay.
The annual white party. I had played that prior to being booked at 347, and most definitely that was an experience. I mean, one of the first times I played in Baltimore, I didn't know that when y'all feeling a DJ, you cuss at him.
Yep.
So, I don't want to get all into. I'm not sure if I can even say all this on the air, but at first, when I was getting cursed at, I'm like, what I do? I'm like, damn, they are rough. And, and then it was like, oh. I was like, okay. I'm like, well, F you too, and
God, you
I'm going to hit you with another one. So it was like, okay, I fed off of that, and that's what I love about Baltimore. It's like they give it up, and they will let you know. If you ain't rocking it, they will let you know.
That's right.
Either walking off the floor,
yep,
or not dancing, or cussing you out in the wrong way.
Right. See, when we cuss you out and you good, you can tell because he's smiling, and usually it's because you're making us mess up our hair. We just went and got our hair done, or our feet hurt. We really want to sit down because it's so good. We dance anyway, or we older now, so we really want to sit because our knees hurt, but we're gonna get up and dance because you keep playing on these records.
Yeah,
it's like that kind of thing.
Yeah, but I loved it, and every time I just come there, just to even, it's the best way to describe Baltimore is it gives me, there's a vibe there, and it kind of reminds me of home. That's why I like 347. It reminds me of a spot on the south side of Chicago, number one. Number two, there's just a vibe out there that I get that it gives me inspiration, musical inspiration. And, I come back home, from out there, and I get it in. So it's like, it's just inspiration. It's like it's a refreshing, it's always a refreshing trip every time I go visit, because I hear and get introduced to a lot of different sounds, a lot of different people, and it's just, it's kind of hard to describe, but you're going to see me a lot.
Well, I'm glad. Because I hope you can take some of that with you, because I'm going to say something. You know, I love Chicago people, I do. But, you know, it seems like Chicago needs a little boost, a house music boost. Meaning, I guess what I mean by that is, you know, East Coast is we're really doing a lot of things, and you hear about it. You know, you hear a lot of, from, you know, Baltimore, D.C., Jersey, Philly, Philly, New York, but it's time. You know, I'm like, well, Chicago, y'all. You know, let's start stepping up a few notches. Would you agree?
You know what? No, I'm not. One thing I will say, or rather, one thing I won't say is, it's not dead in Chicago. There's nothing wrong in Chicago. Yeah, we have our issues, just like any other city.
Oh.
But there's a lot of things that are coming up, that are going on. There's a resurgence going on. And,
great.
I mean, a prime example is the Chosen Few picnic.
Well, yeah. That's
okay.
great.
We're in 2011. From 5 years, this picnic has grown from about 2,000 people to 20,000 people.
Wow.
That's progress.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and it's things like that I look at that lets me know it's still going on. You know, I still have something to look forward to. You know, it's that. There's a lot of we had a very large event last month where they had an induction where they came up with Terry Hunter came up with this DJ program, and it was love. I mean, so many legends, you know, and people I looked up to, all in one room under one roof. You know, I mean, you would have thought with all those egos that it would have been a free-for-all, WWF. But, you know, it was cool. You know, everybody was cool on the same vibe, and it's like that. The sad thing is, and this is something that I've been speaking on, and it's like the sad thing is, there's a separation that's happening now. I see it happening, and the separation is there's a lot of DJs who are coming out of the woodworks now.
Right.
And part of it is, you know, due to technology. You know, you can go download a ton of music, you know, and, you know, get your laptop and get out here and start spinning. Or just bring you some CDs, you know, and get out here and start spinning. And it's like, because they believe, I kind of call them microwave DJs, you know, and it's like because they believe everything should be in an instant. It doesn't work like that, you know, and because, you know, there are certain people who are working constantly, they believe that they're being X'd out because, you know, they're only dealing with these, you know, brand name DJs, so to speak, you know, and part of the problem with that is, you know, it goes back to what I said earlier, you know, you're keeping up drama and madness, no one's going to deal with you. It doesn't matter how good you are of a DJ, a producer, promoter, anything. If you're an a-hole, nobody's going to want to deal with you.
And on that note,
period.
Guess what? We have a caller. We have a caller calling from area code 410, and I'm about to put you on live. Hold on.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no, they're usually pretty good questions. I'm sure this is going to be a good one to you. Hold just a second. Caller 410. Caller from the area code 410. You're on the air with JB326. Yes, you're on the air.
What's up, Senor? This is Chuck.
Hey, Chuck, how are you?
What's up? It's a shame I had to be transitioned in off the a-hole comment, but
Nah, look, I was trying to stick it in there one way or the other. I didn't want to make you wait.
First I want to thank Senor for doing the show. I know she's sick, and you're doing a great job. You sound great.
Thank you.
I just had a quick question for Jamie. What's up, man?
Yeah, what's going on, bro?
What's up, man? I just had a quick question, man. What do you think are the chances, man, of getting any of these kids and these younger folks in the house music? You know, you got Europe, you got the younger folks into it. South Africa is just ridiculous. You got 14, 15-year-olds in the house over there. You know, you think there's any hope for these kids here, man?
You know what? Honestly, and this is just being just as real as I can be. Until some of the people who are DJs, producers, things like that under the deep house, soulful house umbrella, when they realize that there's other forms of dance music and it's all related, and you incorporate some of that all together, you have to open your mind. You know, it's like you can't trip on success. You know, sometimes you need to look at what's making that person or that thing pop and flip that to your standard and run with it. You know, that's the way I see it. And it's like the second thing is, I mean, it's kind of hard to attract, you know, youth when everyone's older than them. You know, it's like, but it's different outside of the States, and that's the funniest thing. You know, just like you said, you know, everywhere else, you can hear a Louis Vega cut next to a Jay-Z cut on the radio. You know, and it's like here, you know, before what helped dance music was the radio, and now that radio isn't really independently owned, it's all corporate now. They control it, so it really doesn't matter how hot the music is. They decide what's hot, and there needs to be an underground movement again to the point where these people take notice. But we also have to cultivate some of the youth. There's a lot of us, you know, who, you know, when the younger kids were, you know, trying to get into it, some of the younger kids, you know, from the rave days and things like that, you know, we kind of shunned them. You know, we're like, oh, you don't know what you're doing. That's not how you do it. And it's like, every generation comes up with their own thing, with their own way, and instead of knocking them, should embrace them. That's what kind of created a little gap. And it's like now it's getting further and further and further away. The only way it can happen, we have to bring artists. It has to be focused back on artists. You have to find cultivate a young, talented singer, young, talented dancers, you know, things like that. There's a lot of things that can be, you know, that can be done, you know. But I guess part of my attitude with it is I just have a feeling that I'm not looking at things just from the U.S. perspective. I'm looking at things from a global perspective, and it's like, honestly, you have to focus on where else is popping, and when they catch on here, they catch on. It's like you can't just sit back and complain. You know, you just got to go where it's popping, go crazy, so everybody know who you are, you know, and hopefully, you know, they pop, but if not, go where they love you. Go where they love you.
I would agree with the whole, because someone else mentioned that to me. If we took a young, you know, artist, preferably female, who can dance and have her sing a house music song, you know, original, then maybe kids will relate to it because it's a kid singing. I love that. Because when TMB started, when they started DJing, you start seeing younger people out.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who've been shunned. You know, it's just I'm just being very real. You know, there's an old guard that's still holding on. You know, and it's like, if it's not done the way they think it should be done, they don't want anyone to do it. And it's like, you're not creating any tradition. You're not handing anything down. So it's like it's going to die within a generation or two if we don't flip it. You know, and it's like that's just my personal perspective.
Well, you know, I used to think that too, but sometimes it's there's two ways to think. I think with that, either we can get some young people in, which is good. I think that's the more the merrier. And I also think that house is something that you graduate into. Also, it's like, okay, now that you're done with, you know, when the person's done with the hardcore rap, you know, and they're a little finished with all the, you know, that hardcore stuff, you know, where Lil Wayne just doesn't appeal to you anymore, but you still want to go out and party. Well, that's why I think the person can graduate the house music. You know what I mean? So there's two ways to think about that. We could either, you know, focus on, you know, getting younger people in, you know, and I agree with you, having a younger artist come in that we cultivate and give her a good house music record that you know, that's a good crossover, you know. Or we just, hey, just face it. You know, a lot of us are older, you know, and maybe we just focus on people 25 and older who are done with the hip-hop, done with the Lil Wayne and all them people, and they're ready to, you know, come to something else. You know, maybe someone who's, you know, because I graduated into jazz. A lot of people start off with jazz. I graduated to it. I didn't start liking jazz until I got in my 20s. You know what I mean? Maybe it is that, because it's like you mature into house music. You mature into jazz, you know. So that could be another way to look at it, too. What do you think?
Yeah, you do have a point. You know, you do have a point. But, I mean, that's the other thing. You can't force it on people as well. You know, you can't force any kind of, you know, music, beliefs, or anything, you know, on anyone. They have to find it themselves. But there's also a lot of people being force-fed garbage now, and they're just consuming it. You know, and it's like if we probably could have some BET money, you know, we really could, you know, create something. I mean, it takes money, you know, as well. So, I mean, it takes money, and it takes looking at things from a professional business aspect as well, instead of a hustle. You know, and you have to be, you know, promotion. You have to be promotional with it. You know, you also have to, you know, create, you know, imaging, you know, videos, things like that. There's a whole nother level to this that a lot of people don't understand, and they're just scratching the surface. You know, you look at, you know, there's people who rag on people like Tiesto and all these other huge, you know, Fatboy Slim, all these other huge people, but you don't look at their formula. You're knocking them. You're knocking them because they're successful and they're playing something that you personally don't like. But maybe you should look at what are they doing to get to the point to push their agenda out there and to make it, you know, instead of knocking them, you know, because it's something different. And it's like that and the pigeonholing of the music. I mean, I come from a day when I used to hear a rap song, a reggae song, a house song, a deep house track, all at the same party.
Yes.
And a slow jam. You know, you know, I mean, it's like a lot of people need to bring, and that's kind of part of my mission, is to have fun with this and just bring the fun back to it. You know, a lot of people just are so serious, you know, with this that they're not even, you know, really having fun. You know, and it's like, don't do nothing that you don't have fun doing, because it's going to show. Right. You know, it's going to show. You're going to end up being unhappy.
You know what? Speaking of, I got to tell you this. I found out, I was talking to a friend of mine, and you know how, you know, people say, you remember you say pigeonholing, where, you know, we play all different kinds of music in one party. Well, do you know they separate house to so many different parts of house now? I just heard of a house, it's a subgenre, I guess you can call it a subgenre. It's called happy hardcore. You ever heard of that?
Oh, yeah.
What? No, what? Wait a minute. So we got house, soulful house, then there's deep soul house. Then you go into the trance and techno and drum and bass and happy hardcore. What is that?
It's all dance music to me. That's the way I look at it. I mean, even if a certain song or a genre of music, that they come up with, first off, I'm going to check it out because, like I said, I'm a fan of music, period. So I try to keep up on, musical fads and see what's hot and see what's going on, even if it's not in my regular box that I deal with, so I can find out, hey, this might fit with what I'm doing. You have to experiment, and like I say, I don't, and research, and I don't knock, something, even if it's something I don't understand, I don't knock it. I research it. I check it out, and there's so many different forms of dance music, that it's crazy, but the main ingredient in all of that is it started in the black community, the black gay community, and it's like the face of dance music has changed, and it's like I'm cool with that, but there's a lot of people who don't know the history and the roots of this. There's people who don't know that techno music started in Detroit in the ghetto.
Yeah, I heard.
It's just things like that, So, I mean, it's things like that make me, want to go further in this, and tell people, things and spread knowledge. I try not to knock other forms of dance music because, then I'm doing, because in this genre of house music, deep house, soulful, whatever you want to call it, we knock more other forms of music than vice versa. I know I've talked to guys who are in the hardcore techno, all this other stuff. They don't diss and not deep house music. They just like, oh man, it's cool. It's a little slow, but that's not my thing. And then they keep it moving. They keep it moving. And it's like it's the opposite. Like I say, it's like we knock things that are. Some of us knock things that are successful. Thinking that's being cool. That's not being cool. Because you're being anti. It's like look a little further, have some vision. You never know what you might, if you might learn if you open your mind up a little bit.
Well,
I mean, and now I'm speaking from experience. I used to be the same way. And then I'm not listening to that. And then, listen to some things or go get a different experience or look at it from a different perspective and be like, wow, even if I may not like it, I'm not just going to knock it. I just say, hey, that's not my thing. This is what I'm into, and I keep it moving, and focus my energy on other stuff.
Well, I don't knock it. I just wish that sometime we stop making all these different subgenres. I mean, because sometimes it's hard to keep up.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It kind of gets confusing,
It gets confusing.
to so many people, and that's why I try to use the term dance music more than anything.
Right. I think
because it's like,
that.
Because it's kind of hard, trying to explain this to, the average person who really doesn't have a clue, because even if you say, oh, this music, is like a spinoff from disco, the first thing they're going to do is put their finger in the air like John Travolta, because they think that's what disco is, and disco is nothing but danceable soul music. So you see what I'm saying? It goes deep. it goes real deep. So I just try to stay on the right path and not be, closed-minded. Musically, and any other form of my life, I try to stay open-minded.
Well,
and it's worked.
Well,
I ain't changing.
We have a few minutes left, and it's some questions I wanted to ask you because I like to answer with this question. We know we love music. We know we love house. Okay, do you have any other hobbies that you may run to when you just want to, take some musical time off, or a day has been long, you did your music for the day, and now it's time to do something else? What do you do?
Oh, I love. I'm a Soul Train fanatic. I love Soul Train. So I have like a underground connection where I have like every episode from the 70s, from 1970 to 1979. So it's like that kind of stuff I'm really into. I like a lot of old black movies from the 70s and things like that, and not just popular movies, not even Dolomite, things that, you might see in like Walgreens or CVS for $5 that you never heard of. I'll buy it, just to just to watch it and see, what's going on. So I mean, besides, that, I really just lay low, and I also like to read. I read a lot of books, a lot of self-help books, like since we're, talking about Baltimore and things like that, one of the books that I revisited that I'm reading again is Kevin Lyle's book.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I never read that.
Yeah, Make It Happen. It's a very, very good book. I recommend it.
Huh.
I recommend it.
So I know people that know him.
Yeah, so, and I mean, that, I guess, I also like the book because he, lets me get a little more, in-depth info about just how he came up in Baltimore and things like that, so it's like, it just interests me, so much. And then, he's in the music industry and things like that, so there's a lot of other things I'm into that I won't say on the air. I'm just kidding. So yeah, it's more Soul Train and reading, and I'm kind of getting back into roller skating, but that's not it. I'm pretty laid back.
Oh my goodness, I never would have known you a Soul Train fanatic. See, that's why I like to ask that question.
Yeah.
I can see the
Most
reading
definitely.
part. I know a lot of people that like to read. I know a lot of people like to read. But I never would have figured that you're a Soul Train fanatic.
Oh, I know dancers' names. Yeah, I'm most definitely, into it. Like Jody Watley was a Soul Train dancer, right?
I remember watching her on there. I remember.
Right, yeah, Jody, Jermaine Stewart, so many people, but yeah, most definitely. 70s Soul Train, love it.
I wonder whatever happened to that. I think she was Korean. You know that Korean, I think she was
That's
Korean.
Cheryl Song.
Who?
Cheryl
Song. What'd you say?
I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Cheryl, I know her name is Cheryl. I believe it's either Song or Wong, one of the two, with the long hair.
Whatever happened to her?
They had if you go to YouTube and search in Soul Train reunion, they had a Soul Train reunion a few years ago, and they had a lot of the old dancers there, and you can see a video with pictures of a lot of the old dancers. So she's you see her in there.
Really?
Yeah.
Cause I used to watch Soul Train all the time too. Cause back in those days, that's really all we really had. I mean, no, we had other things. I mean, we had the Jackson 5 show and stuff like that, but it wasn't nothing was like Soul Train. No. You can ask my mother. I would have a fit if I could not be near a television at 2:00 on Saturday afternoon. Because I had to see Soul Train. You can ask her that, and she'll tell you. Oh my goodness, yeah. So I've been crazy about that show for forever. So we're about to wrap it up, but is there anything? I mean, now's your time. Is there anything you like to say or shout out or anything like that? This is your time to shine right now.
Man. Well, first, no, seriously, first of all, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for even considering me for the interview. I really have had a good time. This has been one of the most easiest interviews I've done, in a long time. Because first off, we're talking. I'm not typing. That's one plus, so it's a little more natural, and then, like I said, all my people, from Baltimore, from D.C., just the East Coast, everybody, has played a part in influencing me in one way or the other. And one thing that I like to, say to a lot of people is if you don't go outside of your comfort zone, you never know what else exists outside in the world. Go see the world. You like to party, you're from Baltimore, go to New York, go to Jersey, go to Chicago, go to L.A., go to the UK, and vice versa. Go somewhere else so you can see how far-reaching this music has really went, and, most definitely I want to shout out, all the people on Handz. I'm a fan. They killed my internet streaming at work, so I can't listen to the shows like I used to, but most definitely, once again, like I said, I just want to thank, the Handz Radio family for, doing their part and keeping house music alive, and you for doing your thing. Everybody, everyone plays a part in this, and the way I look at it, I love this, and if you love it, I love it, and it's going to keep on growing. That's the way I see it.
Well, I want to thank you for, I'm a little virgin. I'm a virgin, though I have some kids, but I'm a virgin to doing this solo on Handz On Talk Radio. So you, broke me in for the whole
watch that.
format. I cleaned it up. I said I'm a virgin to Handz On Talk Radio. I had to make sure. How am I a virgin with some kids?
Right.
How that work?
Hey, some people are.
See, you know what? Don't even use your imagination. I can imagine where it goes, man.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being on the show. It was great talking to you. I look forward to hearing you spin live again. Hopefully you'll be here in Baltimore where people here can hear us, can hear you play, and we can get down and have a good time. So, there's a good way for people in Jersey and New York who come on down to come hear you spin. Because I must admit, you really rocked it when you was here. And I will say that I did mess up my hair. I did mess up my hair.
You. Yeah, you were trying to dance cute at first.
Oh, wait, trying? What are you trying? Ain't no trying to dance cute. What's wrong with you? Diva does it, honey. Now you gotta say, at least I done with my dancing shoes. I ain't one of them sisters that try to. I can't do the 3-inch heels. I can't do that. But I got my dance on. You had me one or two of them little fancy drinks they fix at 347. I was good to go.
Oh yeah,
I had a ball.
yeah. Most definitely, I'm coming back out. But I'm not leaving cold to go to cold, so it'll be in the spring.
Well, no, what you have right there is freezing. What we have compared to you is chilly.
Right.
Because, it was
right. I was ready to put on shorts the last time I was out there. It was so warm compared to home.
Yeah. We was in the 40s last week.
Right. See, that's a heat wave to me.
See? So, if hopefully you can come, just let me know ahead of time so I can make my plans. And because, us teachers, we work on weekends, a teacher's job is never done. But please let us know ahead of time. Oh, is before you leave, if anybody wants to, catch up with you or send you a message or anything, is there any contact information that you like to give out?
You can most definitely catch me on Facebook /Jamie3TOO6. And you can also catch me, I'm on MySpace, same address, Jamie3TOO6. And I'm also Googleable. That's my new word, Googleable.
Googleable?
Yeah, Google me. And you most definitely can find, I'm also on SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/Jamie326, and also on Podomatic /3TOO6.
Oh, so
and that's where you can get that's where you can check out a lot of my mixes. I have a lot of mixes online.
And how, are you going to let us know when those remixes or whatever is going to come out? Because I gotta hear it.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Most definitely. Most definitely. You will hear it.
Well, no, you say. Will it be before the year's up?
Well, depending on how things go. Sometimes they change release dates and things like that. But like I said, I haven't gotten any I've sent off my projects. I haven't gotten any release dates yet, so that's why I really haven't said much about it.
Oh, okay.
But once I get a release date, most definitely, I'm going to make sure the whole world knows.
Oh, I want to know before the whole world. I don't want to hear it when it. No, I want to hear it before then.
I'm not talking about the song. I'm talking about just the announcement.
I want the announcement beforehand. I want my cell phone to go off, and it's going to be Jamie 366. Hey, what's up? Well, I got a release date. For real? Oh, you did? When? That's what I want to hear. I don't want to hear about it when it's blasting on Facebook. That's late to me. I want you to do that, too.
I'll make sure you know.
Everyone
else, all my people.
If you don't, I'm going to have to call up my hit squad. My hit squad going to have to call you and had to put you on blast. I got it like that.
Oh, no, you don't have to do that.
I ain't got to do that?
House music is about peace and love.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, that might be true. But, since I am one of your fans, I mean, and since man, you got maybe we can do this internet interview again when it comes out. So when it comes out, you could, by this time, I'm sure everybody's going to be listening to Hands On Talk Radio, and you can really blast it. See, because, this show right here is worldwide, baby. This is everywhere. I gotta give Chuck props because my man does it. He gets it worldwide.
Yes,
everybody will know by it. Everybody's gonna know. Around the world, South Africans, you're gonna start getting hits from all over the place. So, when your stuff come out, make sure you let us know that it's coming. And soon we can put it on, man, we can get you on. Come on.
Oh yeah, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about that. We're going to work together. Don't. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about.
And this is Senyosa, man. I kind of got a little name. I got people say, Senyosa. Like, yeah, I know who she is. See, you got to give me a little bit now. You got to give me something when it's time. So I can tell my people.
I got you. I know you're going to get it out. I know you're going to get the word out.
Okay.
I know who you are. I know who you are.
I ain't in no trouble neither.
Right, nope. You all right.
Yeah, I was. See, you know what? My face ain't on the post office wall. I ain't that bad now, but I'm not in any trouble. I've been real good. I've been real good doing this talk show host. I found my niche in life.
I heard that.
And somebody said I can actually sing. I heard this a week ago. They said, I was singing in a club one day, just singing out loud. And I'm hitting, Jamie. You hit me, hitting. And I was singing, and I was in the club just singing to the song, and people standing right from me like, she said, I didn't know you could sing. I said, I can. She's like, girl, you sound good. I said, for real? She's like, yeah, why you ain't never sing a song like Stop Playing? She's like, no. She was with your name, singing a song, and it'll be a hit. See, there you go. Hint.
I got you.
But anyway, it was good to hear you on here. It was great having you on Hands On Talk Radio, brought to you by Hands On Radio. And hopefully we'll get to interview you again when your songs are coming out. I had to stop saying tracks. When your songs and remixes come out, maybe we can get you back on.
Oh, no doubt. It'll be before that because I really enjoyed myself. You have a nice show, and I like the laid-back format. And like I said, I'm also a fan of Hands On Radio, so this was just all love. Thank you. I really enjoyed myself this evening. Hope I didn't offend anybody.
Oh, no, you were a wonderful, wonderful guest. I want to thank all the listeners out there. Thank you for tuning in. Be here next week. You'll hear on Facebook who we're going to have. I'm sure, like I said, Chuck does his mark. He does his thing when it comes to letting people know who's going to be on next week. So please stay tuned and be here next week. Same Hands On Radio time, same Hands On Radio channel. You take care, okay?
Love.
Later, Jamie. Peace.
Peace.